The riots in Portland seem to be simmering down. Last night, people showed up for a dance party at the ICE facility or whatever, and there was no real agitation or excessive violence. The cops did come out. Apparently, there was some warnings. People retreated and then started dancing in the street. And guess what? Everything was chill. You know why? I think there's one big reason. Because Donald Trump and the federal government's plan worked. I've been harping on about this, how smart it was. Everyone's saying, invoke the Insurrection Act, send in the military, shut down these riots. Now it would have looked really, really bad. It would have looked really bad. Not only that, but local businesses and law enforcement would be at odds with Trump, and it would only make things worse, potentially sparking some kind of hot civil war. I know, it's a little over the top, but I mean, think about it. When you have state police and local police being told not to cooperate with Trump and the military coming in, it just seemed like an all-around bad idea. Here's what Trump did. Deputize Oregon State Police, which means you arrest one of these rioters, they get federal charges. Now you got the local authorities arresting the people, the ones who are committing the most egregious acts, and they get charged by federal attorneys. And it's been happening. It's happening also in Rochester. So when I see that things are starting to simmer down in Portland, hey, maybe it's because we just heard Antifa put out a big warning that the FBI was showing up to people's houses and they were being charged with similar charges they got at the state level. Yeah. See, the DA in Portland kept letting people go. Now, Trump, the DHS, the FBI are coming in and saying, nah, you're still going to get charged and arrested, and we're going to do it in Rochester as well. Here's what happens. The left gets their peaceful protest. They show up to ICE. They danced in the street. But the agitators, guess where they are? They're behind bars. So there's no one to throw the explosives or set the fires or start the fights with the cops. Isn't this exactly what the left claimed they wanted? I'm going to have to go and say, perhaps. But here's the other big story. Apparently, one of the individuals who was arrested rioting in Portland is a literal Democrat staffer. So when Joe Biden says, do I look like one of these radical socialists? No, you don't. But you look like a guy who might employ them. And it looks like the Democratic Party is entertaining these people who are showing up with batons and shields. And it's literally your employees and your campaign staffers. So here's the first story. I got a bunch of stories to go through because I want to talk about who these rioters are. And now that they're getting actually charged because these local DAs wouldn't do anything about it, everything's calm. Fantastic. Congratulations, Trump. Seems like your plan worked. Now, I will say, however, I am concerned that potentially the reason why things are simmering down is not necessarily because these people are getting federal charges. It's because they may be headed to Washington, D.C. In 1 week, they will engage in their, whatever White House siege event. And many of the organizers are probably stepping back from Portland, getting in their, kitchen buses or whatever, driving across the country, which can take a few days. Then they've got to get to DC for pre-planning. They're going to make weapons and stuff. That's what they do. They'll probably have like a semi-rural warehouse where all of the, far leftists are sleeping and organizing. And I've been to these places where you can see like on a table, they'll have like 10 shields being put together. It's really funny when they desperately try to act like these things don't exist. Like when there was a story where Donald Trump said, somebody was on a plane and they saw a bunch of these far leftists, in thugs in black uniforms or whatever. And Trump's perspective of it was from a game of telephone. Somebody's on a plane. They see Antifa people. They go and tell people. Trump hears. Trump imagines this plane load of angry Antifa with clubs and stuff. I tweeted, I used to fly like twice a week and covering civil unrest and protest. And you would see Antifa people. And people are like, duh, because they have like punk stickers. No. I'm literally talking about people who have revolution fists, communist, the Antifa strike through, whatever it's called. They would have all of this ACAB. They'd be wearing clothes. They'd have helmets. And I'm like, I know where that guy is going and I know why he's going there. That's not a journalist. It's a dude with a backpack covered in patches saying, revolution, nothing less, wearing a helmet. And sure enough, they'd be down there. And it wasn't like the plane was full of them. It'd be like 2 or 3 people every so often. Literally not every single flight, but they don't want to admit it. They don't want to admit it. And so when I say that there are literal warehouses, where I've been to them, and there was one in the U.S. and there was one I went to, I think it was in France. You walk in And there's people serving food in the front. In the back, they've got shields. They've got flags. They bring flags because they can wrap up the flag part and have a club. And that's like their excuse. Like, we're just holding a flag. That's why cops will ban flag poles, or cities, I should say, will ban flag poles. But they do this. But I'll tell you, man, you say something like that and they're all going to go, oh, he's so crazy. There's no Antifa warehouse where they're making weapons. And they'll try and play like it's not really happening. You know why? They want to pretend it doesn't exist. But you got to ask yourself, when they show up to Portland and they have 20 of the exact same wooden shield with the Black Lives Matter fist on it, where did those come from? Did everybody just have the blueprints off the internet and they took their table saw in their backyard and made their own shields? No, they're being made somewhere. So where are they being made? That's the next thing the feds need to figure out. They need to go to where these things are being produced and stop them from producing them. I guess maybe it's a bit over the top. Maybe they don't have a right to tell people you can't make wooden planks with symbols on them, so they can't really do anything about it. But if they're providing material support to people who are intending to commit a crime, you got RICO, you got conspiracy. What do you got? Come on, man. Ted Cruz mentioned RICO, something like that. We are seeing now, check this out. 2 men face federal charges from Saturday Rochester protests. U.S. Attorney James P. Kennedy Jr. announced that 2 men have been charged with civil disorder during protests in Rochester on September 5th. Good. Glad to hear it. Innocent until proven guilty. They're people who are at riots. They're accused of throwing fireworks and bashing a cop with a shield. These may not be true. It's an allegation, but I'll tell you what. The feds are going to get these people, the criminals and the extremists, off the streets, and then we can have real protests. You know what I love? I love reading this story from Oregon Live. Portland protests returned to ICE building Wednesday after top DHS official criticizes the city. And they say that these Black Lives Matter supporters had a dance party. Awesome. You might obstruct the road. You might, make some people angry, but this is de-escalation, man. I love it. I love it. Have your peaceful protest. Be a little obnoxious. Send that message to people. Do a dance party in front of ICE, and you get a story that I can positively talk about. Check it out. Nobody gets hurt. Cops come out. There's some issues with overtime, I guess. We're going to have to foot the bill for this. But hey, man, we're a nation founded upon protest. So if these people are going to come out and have a dance party, that is awesome. I completely disagree with their ideology, but I will defend to the death their right to express themselves. And I'm all about the First Amendment, free speech and protest, just so long as you're peaceably assembling. And a dance party is exactly this. So it's really funny when people are like, 93% of the protests were peaceful, Tim. Why don't you praise the peaceful protests? Right here, baby. Awesome. Dude, you love to see it. Having a dance party, do it to it. I remember when you had those environmentalists in D.C. and they put like a boat in an intersection and then chained themselves to it. I think that's a bit over the top, but hey, man, they didn't hurt anybody. The cops come in. It's a little bit of a nuisance. They get arrested for it. They get a slap on the wrist charge that is an inconvenience, and they're told, don't come back, don't do it again. But everybody goes home. You get your press, you get your message. It's like banner drops too. Civil disobedience. You're not hurting anybody. It's not permanent damage. You're just kind of creating a circumstance in which they talk about what you're doing. There is a challenge as cities become more and more dense that you might just have people obstructing roads literally everywhere. And this is something we have to consider. When you see one act of civil disobedience and you're like, that's fine, they're blocking a road, they'll clear them out, and it was really annoying for people. I know it can be annoying, but they're not hurting anybody and they are getting arrested. So it's a fine line, right? It's hard to know where we draw the line. The issue now is scale. If we have a city of 10 million people or 9 million, like, New York or something, and 50 different protest organizations all block the intersections, to every bridge and every tunnel in Manhattan. Now, each individual group is like, we're just engaging in a small act of civil disobedience, but together, all of these different groups are basically shutting down commerce into and out of the city. That's really bad. And that's where the challenge comes in. At what point are we unable to respect nonviolent civil disobedience if too many people are obstructing, right? You go back in time to when we draft up the Constitution and stuff. The likelihood that you're going to have mass groups everywhere doing something like this was less likely because these areas were much less densely populated. Now, if you have 10 million people, you could have, like 5 people from different organizations, not even knowing each other was doing something. Like maybe it's Labor Day and they're like, hey, we're all going to do a protest, and the whole city gets shut down because of like 50 people. So there's serious challenges to consider. But I'll tell you this, for now, if the rioters stop, they're getting arrested and being removed, this is a win for the left and it's a win for Trump. But there is some net negative here for Trump. The unfortunate reality is that because Trump's plan seems to be working, Antifa's running scared. Well, the riots are out of the press and people aren't going to give Trump credit for it. The news cycle shifts back to COVID and to Woodward and all these other issues. And now these people, the regular people, are not going to be realizing what Trump did to shut all this down. We had a very dark period. I don't know if it's over. In 1 week, they could be in D.C. and everything could be worse again. And of course, they'll try and blame Trump and all that nonsense. We just saw a guy execute a Trump supporter. So this is all very, very frightening. I'm talking to some people. We had Robbie Suave from Reason, Libertarian, on the IRL podcast, and he was mentioning, what has Trump really done? And I said, the DHS deputized state police. The riots are basically shutting down now. It's really simple. You got 100 people and you've got 10 extremists that are starting fights. You get rid of those 10 people, you got 100 peaceful protesters. Now they're getting positive press. Good for them. Check this out. This is from September 3rd. Three previously arrested protesters now face federal charges. This is 1 week ago. And now today I can report to you that there was a dance party in Portland. Wow. So you mean to tell me that when you arrest the people starting fires, burning things down, and pushing people into extreme actions, it becomes a peaceful protest? Amazing. Amazing. Why wouldn't Oregon do this? Did they want the riots to continue? Think about this. When the DHS finally decided to implement this deputization, boom, over. I got to stress, though, I'm making a grand assumption that that's the case, but I think it's fair to say, because we're seeing this across the country, right? I think it's fair to say, but my bigger fear is that they're just preparing and organizing and getting ready to show up in Washington, D.C. Now, a lot of these people who have been arrested on federal charges, a lot of them are being locked up, put on bail. So I don't think they're showing back up. They may be just heading to D.C., or many of them maybe went into hiding. Because we did see an article from Time magazine recently that was saying people went to these protests, to these riots, carrying weapons, that they were just, I just had bear mace. It's why I always have bear mace. And they got arrested. And now they're like, oh, no, I face jail time. Uh-oh. Yeah, don't go to a riot, man. Don't bring weapons. Here's what you got to do. You want to go to a peaceful protest? Do it. I encourage it. I love peaceful protest. Okay. This country is wonderful. I love the idea that I can say F you to the president or anybody I want. I mean, not necessarily on social media because, they'll ban you. But anyway, the idea is we're a country where some poor working class dude can look to the richest elitist and say, go F yourself. And that's awesome. I can't actually swear on YouTube, but this is for family friendly purposes, mind you. But if I'm out in the street and I want to say, yo, go F yourself, I can do it. It's great. So I love the peaceful protest. I'll tell you what, don't bring weapons. Don't go preparing for a fight. If things start getting crazy because agitators show up, get out. Get out. Do not let them hijack what you're doing. Now, here's the bigger problem, right? And always listen, man. Sometimes the cops make mistakes. Sometimes they lie. I've witnessed it. Sometimes they instigate. But you do not win the fight with police by literally fighting them. You win the fight with police by complying, taking the L. They're gonna cuff you. They're gonna say we're gonna arrest you or whatever, and you say I want a lawyer. I won't be answering any questions, stuff like that. Then once they release you on whatever charge, then you have the lawyer go after it. Or not everyone can afford a lawyer, but I'll tell you this. Even in because I've witnessed these circumstances, your best bet, don't fight, don't resist, don't scream, don't kick. What activist organizations have routinely encouraged people to do is just to go limp. Don't resist, let them carry you away, okay? This is the appropriate peaceful protest or nonviolent civil disobedience response. The cops will do their job. In fact, I've seen so many circumstances, and you see these celebrities. They'll get arrested very calmly and peacefully, and the cops are very nice. Sometimes the cops don't even cuff people. They'll be like, we're just going to, have you go in the car. It's, you're being arrested on disorderly conduct or whatever. They get released. We carry on. If people are getting violent, you got to understand, if they don't know who's throwing explosives and they need to shut this down because they do, you might get caught up in that. It's messed up. I don't like it. But what is the solution? Just let people throw explosives? Nah. Well, now the solution is Trump sending in the feds and everything seems to be chilling out. Don't let them gaslight you, however. Portland police arrested a Democratic staffer. They say the police arrested Christina Narayan, who is a legislative director for the top Democrat in Oregon's House of Representatives, along with 58 others during a riot that began Saturday night and continued into Sunday morning, according to a Portland Police Bureau report. Narayan has worked for House Speaker Tina Kotek since 2016. So why is it that Oregon would not prosecute these people? Why is it that the Attorney General in Oregon sued on their behalf against Trump? And why is it now that the DHS, the FBI, federal attorneys are the ones shutting this down? Could it be that the state Democrats are literally outriding themselves and are protecting their own? Boy, I tell you what, man, you got a racket. This is akin to organized crime infiltrating government, if you were to ask me. They warn us. They say, Tim, white supremacists have been infiltrating the police and using that as, okay, yeah, that's terrible. Man, we saw the Ferguson emails. There was some racist stuff in there. I don't want to see it. Get them out. How can you have equal opportunity if you have bigoted, prejudicial, and racist individuals or ideological zealots within government enforcing moral authoritarianism from their dogmatic perspective? We need equality under the law. I don't care if the person in government is a white supremacist or an extreme far leftist revolutionary communist or whatever. They're both bad if they're not following the Constitution and the law, and they're using those prejudices to empower their side. I don't want any of it. So when I see, man, and the Republicans have no tolerance for this. Steve King, he's like the perfect example. He said a handful of really offensive things. The left went nuts, and the Republicans didn't vote for him. He got primaried. He's gone. At least that's my understanding. It's been a while since I was reading about him. They got rid of him. And for what? A tweet? Look at that. Now, Oregon, they defend the rioters. They allow them to continue. They release them. They won't charge them. And it turns out the people rioting literally work as a Democrat staffer for the state. Well, of course they're being let go. They're all in on it. I'm sorry, man. It's coming from inside the House. The rioters are in the government. And now you have a mayor running in Portland who's avowed Antifa. You've got revolutionaries taking over the government of Oregon. It's not the only place. It's happening across this country. That's why I'll tell you, man, it's such a bummer that Trump does these dumb things. Look, the Woodward stuff came out and Donald Trump said he knew that COVID was serious. And I'm like, that's great. I figured he did. He took early action. Then he said, I didn't want to create a panic. And I'm like, that's great. I'm glad he did. Then he said, he didn't say this, but then it was pointed out that within a month he was having rallies. And I'm like, you know what, man? That's Trump. And there's things to that sounds horrible. If Trump really did know about this, he shouldn't have been having rallies. But I'm definitely going to fact check to make sure what happened with those rallies, because, the media likes to fluff things up and lie about stuff. But listen, when I see stories like this, that you've got, what do you got in New York? You've got a bunch of rich white protesters going around smashing things. You've got Democrats in Oregon actively participating in the riots. You've got people in the government of Oregon defending the rioters, and it's only because of Trump they got shut down. I'll take what I can get, man. And I'm sorry, I want the riots to stop. Some people have said vote Libertarian. The Libertarian Party endorsed this. Not the riots, but the Libertarian Party, in the weirdest thing ever, defended this idea that we must do something. That's not what the Libertarian Party is supposed to do. They're the third biggest political party in this country. And what did they say? It was Jo Jorgensen. With all due respect, I think she seems to be a nice individual, but she tweeted, it's not enough to be not racist. We must actively be anti-racist. And I'm like, what do you mean actively do anything? You're the Libertarian Party. We want to be left alone and live our lives. We shouldn't actively be told to do anything. And anti-racism is not what people think it is. Anti-racism doesn't mean you oppose racism. It means you support racism. They just changed the definition. What anti-racism means when they use that term, they use semantic games to manipulate people. Anti-racism means an inversion of white cis heteronormative patriarchy or whatever. The idea being the dominant political class, religion, and race in this country is, like white Christian, whatever, or like WASPs, or, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, things like that. And so anti-racism is not about stopping racism. It's about their perception of what racism is, and that's white privilege. So it's anti-white privilege is a better way to explain what anti-racism means. No, I believe being not racist is actually the best thing you could do, because then you judge people based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. So therein lies the bigger problem we see today. That we've got Democrats out rioting in the streets, gaining traction on the West Coast. These people who are avowed racists, getting positions in government, going out and rioting, and they're being protected. And the best chance to stand up against it, Donald J. Trump. How about that, man? Look, I know there's a lot of people who are like, woo, Trump. You know, I praise him for the Middle East stuff, the peace deal with Israel and UAE, Kosovo, Serbia, amazing. Crossing into the DMZ, over the DMZ into North Korea with no security. Bravo, man. Really impressive. Bring our troops back. I love it. It's some of the best stuff we've seen in a long time. And of course, the warmonger class, they're outraged that Donald Trump's desire to uphold his promises to the American people outweighs their bloodlust. Sorry, I think Trump would rather tell the American people, I'm going to do right by what I promised, as opposed to just pumping out more weapons and machines, dropping them in foreign countries, and then occupying I understand the war in the Middle East is much, much more complicated than just the military-industrial complex. But Trump's like, the American people don't want it. And then the American people aren't going to have it. At least to the best of his abilities. They're still trying to stop him. So I look at that and I'm like, awesome. I look at him banning critical race theory, mocking Bob Woodward in this audio tape about white privilege, saying you've drank the Kool-Aid, and pushing back on this, and I love it. A lot of other things about Trump I do not love. I don't. But if it comes to me and extremists who are burning things down and rioting, literally in the Democratic Party, and Joe Biden being too weak to stand up to them, sorry, man, I'm not going anywhere near that stuff. I want this to stop. I'm glad to see it's dying down. Congratulations, Trump. Looks like your plan's working. Let's see how it plays out in the coming week with the siege at the White House on September 17th. Maybe it'll be nothing. We'll see how it plays out. But for now, I think we're starting to see an end to the riots. I do. We'll see. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I will see you all then.